My name is Howard Julian. I'm from Bremerton, Washington, and I like to bend wood. My shop is called Howard's Creations.
My most popular creations are great blue heron sculptures that stand approximately 24 inches tall. They are made from either red oak or alternating strips of red oak and English walnut. Making the strips is a typical woodworking project involving rip cutting the strips and then planing them to the correct thickness. This video won't cover these basic tasks. All of the measurements that I describe are in inches. This process requires 5 strips 38 inches long, 3/4 of an inch wide, and a hair over 1/8 of an inch thick. Also needed are 3 strips 9 inches by 3/4 by an eighth to create the taller, thicker crest and head. Especially with walnut, failed bends are not uncommon, so it is good practice to steam more strips than the final creation requires. Steam bending is a one-shot process. Once the wood is steamed, you have a single chance to bend it, and once you let steamed wood strips cool, they cannot be rebent by re-steaming them. It is good practice to have available additional molds for other projects to bend any extra wood into so that the strips and the steaming won't be wasted. After cutting and milling the strips, they are put into the steam box for steaming. As the actual process takes many hours, I typically prepare the steam boxes a day in advance. My steam boxes are made from 1x6 boards that are hinged open to the top. Steam is pumped in at one end. The boxes are not completely tight so that the steam can escape and not build pressure to dangerous levels. These boxes are not boilers. Steam pressure inside the boxes should be minimized. Most steam bending craftsmen use PVC or ABS pipe that can be opened at one end. As I often have different sizes and species of wood steaming, I like to be able to see the individual pieces when I pull them for bending. Seeing all of each piece of steaming wood from the top makes it easier for me to choose which to bend next. The top opening also allows me to extract the wood strips and get them into the molds in the most rapid manner. Don't reach into the steam box. Use pliers. I steam 1/8 inch wood at least 8 hours. 1/4 inch wood takes at least 12 hours. Oak bends more easily with less steam time than walnut. Each species of wood has different steaming characteristics. Using a sauna steamer allows me to set up the steaming as an all-day project. I can start the steam early in the morning and let it steam away all day. My steam equipment sits outside among the rhododendrons. Be sure to check the process frequently. Live steam is very dangerous. Do not, under any circumstances, let the steam box build pressure. The process at this point assumes that your molds have already been created. Building molds is covered in a separate video. The great blue heron sculpture that I am building is made of 5 main pieces. Because the shapes of the backs and the increasing and decreasing radii of the neck bends, 5 separate molds are needed. Since I have limited space in my workshop, I stack them. This is a stack of 5 molds. Each heron mold is 4 pieces. I color code and number them for reassembly. Additional molds are needed for the short strips that make up the head and the crest. While the wood is steaming, the mold set should be disassembled and arranged for rapid reassembly. We are now ready to bend wood into the mold beginning with level 1. This video shows the molding of levels 2 and 5. The process is identical for each layer. Quickly remove a wood strip from the steam. Be careful they are hot and be sure to close the lid. Move it to the mold set and begin bending, slowly and carefully. Try to keep the time between removal from steam temperature until completing the bend as short as possible. Under 1 minute is best. Manipulate the wood slowly, deliberately, and continuously until the piece is bent. If it breaks, remove the strip, toss it aside, and start over. Don't try to recover. Try to keep finger pressure on the outside of the bends. If the wood splits, it will break on the outside first. So try to maintain pressure as you move the wood into the molds. Try to set up the process so that you bend the tightest bends earliest while the wood is still at the highest temperature. This is the point in the process where experience and practice pay off. You develop a feel for how the wood is bending and how rapidly you should be working. Levels 1 and 5 are the most difficult because they have the smallest radius bends, about 4 inches in diameter. Level 3 is the easiest. Breathe a sigh of relief when each level is completely bent, especially level 1, and then add the mold pieces for levels 2, 3, etc. I won't show the actual bending of each layer.
If the layer 1 bit breaks, you should probably let the steaming process continue for another hour before trying it again. If you have extra unbent pieces at this point, they should be shaped into other molds that you have made available. I try to allow the wood to rest in the molds overnight before proceeding to the next step.
After the heron is bent, it needs to rest for at least 8 hours for the shapes to set. I usually do this overnight. The next day, it is time to clamp and glue the heron into its final shape. At this point, the separate wood strips are still quite flexible. Each project will require a gluing frame to create the final shape. My frame has a base and forms for each of the 2 neck bends. A bar clamp and a pipe clamp are used in conjunction with several C-clamps. Building the gluing frame is a similar trial and error project to building the bending molds. The design and building of the bending molds and the gluing frame is where your creativity comes into play. I like to dry shape the heron into the gluing frame to set up the process so that the gluing can be more effective. The quality of the final process will depend on how tightly the adjacent strips are pressed and glued through the neck and head while leaving the body in a more open, ethereal format. Typically, I allow a creation to rest overnight at this point. The dry shape step can be eliminated, however, if there are time constraints on the process. This step will move the wood strips one step closer to their final shape. For gluing, I am currently, in 2025, using Gorilla Wood Glue Ultimate, which is not regular Gorilla Glue. In earlier years, I have successfully used Weldwood Plastic Resin Glue, which you have to mix with water, and Titebond 3 Ultimate Wood Glue. Adhesive technology is rapidly evolving. Be sure to stay up to date with it and experiment with new adhesives. Gorilla Wood Glue Ultimate and Titebond 3 Ultimate are indicated as being waterproof. Sculptures that use these products can be left outside in protected areas. However, don't expect them to hold up for many years when directly exposed to extreme weather conditions. I brush the glue onto both sides of the areas to be glued. You have about a half hour to move, adjust, and clamp the wood strips in the gluing frame. I do not apply glue to the tail end of the set at this time. As each piece is glued, they are loosely assembled into a single set. After a set of 5 pieces is loosely assembled, the set is then inserted into the gluing frame. I begin to tighten the bar clamp, which will compress the neck together. As I compress the neck, I lightly hammer the set to keep it as flat as possible in the frame. When the bar clamp has the neck somewhat compressed, I add 3 C-clamps to compress the wood strips in the topmost bend. Try not to compress the C-clamps directly against the finished neck pieces. They will create unwanted indentations. Use a layer of wood strip along the outside of all curves. The center of the topmost bend will be the center point for all compression. Tighten this clamp as tight as possible while keeping the wood set as flat as possible. From this point, always move to the next clamp away from the center point in each direction. As the set is compressed, you want the strips to individually slide away from the center so as to leave no gaps between the individual strips. This takes practice. When the 3 C-clamps on the topmost bend are tightly compressed, the bar clamp can be compressed, and this will finish the formation of the topmost bend. As clamp compression continues, the wood strips will continue to slide slightly toward the loose end. Be sure to keep the set as flat as possible throughout this process. The bottommost neck bend is where the neck begins to flare out for the body. As you begin to move from the neck to the body, be sure to insert spaces between the wood strips in the body to create proper separation. A C-clamp is compressed at the beginning of the bottommost neck bend, followed by a pipe clamp at the center of the bend. I sometimes add a second bar clamp after the pipe clamp. Finally, the gluing process ends at the tail. Apply glue to each tail piece and clamp with 2 C-clamps.